Valencia Carter closed her eyes and let the first note of her violin cut through the quiet hum of the hotel lobby like warm honey. The bow glided across the strings, and the melody, soft, aching, and full of longing, wrapped itself around the marble pillars and crystal chandeliers of the Bellview Grand Hotel like it belonged there. She had played this song 1,000 times, but today it felt different. Today, something tugged at her chest, as if the music was reaching not just the guests, but someone who truly needed to hear it. Across the lobby, sitting alone in a tailored navy suit and nursing an untouched glass of bourbon, August Jensen didn't blink. His phone buzzed face down beside him, ignored. His eyes were glued to the girl with the violin, her dark hair pulled into a loose braid, her fingers dancing over the strings like she wasn't just playing music, she was bleeding it. He didn't know her name. She wasn't on the hotel's staff list, and he would have remembered a face like that. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. That was what struck him first. No eye contact, no forced smiles, just raw, focused emotion. The kind of emotion August hadn't felt in years, not since his father's funeral. Not since he'd locked his heart behind a 10-figure bank account and a rotating door of dinner companions who couldn't tell Bach from Beethoven. "She's new," said the concierge softly as he walked past August's table. "Started last week, plays every afternoon. Guests love her." August didn't respond. His fingers tapped once against the glass, then stilled. He didn't love her music, he needed her music. Valencia finished the piece with a breath that sounded like relief and lowered her violin. She didn't look up, she never did. Not really. She had a strict rule: play, pack, leave. No lingering around rich guests with too much money and too little respect. She wasn't here to be discovered, she was here to pay rent. But as she packed her case and turned to leave, her eyes met his. It was barely a second, but August felt it. The next afternoon he was there again, same table, same drink, same suit. She noticed this time, noticed that he wasn't pretending to scroll on his phone like the others, he just watched, listened. And when her bow stumbled, a rare mistake, he didn't flinch, didn't blink. After her set, she passed his table violin case over her shoulder and paused. "Twice in a row?" she asked, eyebrows raised. August blinked as if snapped out of a trance. "Is that a problem?" She studied him, clean-shaven, sharp jaw, handsome in a way that looked like money. He probably owned one of the penthouses upstairs. "No," she said carefully, most people don't come to the lobby to listen, they come to escape." "I'm not most people," August said, his voice low and smooth. "Right." She gave a half smile and turned to walk away. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. She hesitated. "Valencia." "Like the city, like the violin," she said, then disappeared into the elevator. He didn't stop thinking about her the rest of the week. By Friday, he knew her schedule, knew she played between 4 and 6. Knew she always wore black, always left quickly, always carried her case like it weighed more than it should, so he waited until the end of her set, then stood and approached her. "Dinner," he said. She blinked. "Excuse me?" "You and me, dinner, not here." "Somewhere quiet." Valencia laughed, caught off guard. "You don't even know me." August shrugged. "I know your music, that's a start." She tilted her head. "You some kind of talent scout?" "No." "Record label?" "No." "Then why?" He looked at her and for the first time in months dropped the guarded tone. "Because when you play, it feels like the world stops spinning, and I haven't felt that in a long time." Valencia stared at him. Something about him was too smooth, too polished. She'd met men like him before. Men who saw a struggling musician and thought she'd be impressed by a dinner invitation. But there was something in his eyes, not just interest, loneliness. She exhaled. "Fine, one dinner, that's it. Saturday. 7, I'll send a car. I'll meet you there, I don't do mystery chauffeurs." He grinned. "Fair enough." She gave him a look. "Nothing fancy." He nodded. Saturday came and the restaurant was not what she expected. It wasn't flashy, no velvet ropes or paparazzi. Just a quiet rooftop bistro with twinkle lights and a view of the city skyline that stole her breath. Valencia showed up in a simple navy dress she'd borrowed from her roommate. August stood when he saw her, pulling out her chair like he'd been raised in another era. "You look beautiful," he said genuinely. "Thanks," she said, trying to keep her guard up. The waiter brought wine. August ordered the C bass for her before she could protest, but not in an arrogant way, more like he'd just guessed right. Over dinner they talked about music, about family. About how she'd once played Carnegie Hall as a child prodigy before her mother got sick and everything fell apart. About how he'd built his tech company from a dorm room and lost most of his 20s to boardrooms and betrayal. "You're not what I expected," she said as dessert arrived. "Neither are you," August said softly then. As she dipped her spoon into the creme brulee, he slid a small velvet box across the table. She froze. "What?" "Relax," he said, chuckling. "It's not a ring." She opened it. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with a tiny violin charm. "I saw it yesterday," he said. "Thought of you." Valencia stared at it, then at him. "I can't accept this." "You can. It's a gift, no strings." She raised an eyebrow. "Pun intended," he laughed. "Maybe." She hesitated, then slipped it on. It fit perfectly. After dinner, he walked her to the elevator in his building. She expected a kiss. He didn't push. "Thank you," she said softly. "For the bracelet. For listening." He nodded. "Always." And as the elevator doors closed, she realized something terrifying. She wanted to see him again. Valencia's fingers hovered over the strings, unmoving. For the first time since she'd started playing at the Belleview Grand, she couldn't begin. It was Monday afternoon, and the lobby buzzed with the usual rhythm of soft conversations and clinking glasses, but she stood frozen. Her bow hand trembled not noticeably to anyone else, but enough for her to feel it. She wasn't thinking about the music. She was thinking about him, August Jensen. She hadn't expected to see him again after Saturday. One dinner, she'd told herself. One evening of wine and rooftop views and a bracelet that still shimmered on her wrist like a secret. But he had stayed with her quietly, persistently in her mind. She hated that. Hated how quickly his voice had become familiar. She finally lifted her bow and let the first notes spill into the air. This time, it didn't come easy. When she finished her set and turned to leave, he was already standing by the elevator, no drink, no table, no pretense, just waiting. "You're late," she said, stepping in beside him. "I got caught in a boardroom full of people who like the sound of their own voices," August replied, "but I made it in time for the second half." She side-eyed him. "You came just to hear me stumble through it. You didn't stumble." "I did. I noticed. But I also noticed you recovered like a professional." She didn't respond as the elevator climbed. He didn't seem in a hurry to fill the silence. When the doors opened, she expected him to head toward the penthouse floor again. Instead, he gestured for her to follow him out onto the mezzanine level. "I want to show you something," he said. She hesitated but stepped out. He led her through a narrow corridor behind the ballroom and opened a door to a private lounge dim, with bookshelves lining the walls, a grand piano in the corner, and a window overlooking the city park. "I rent this space sometimes when I need to think," he said. "Or not think." She walked in slowly, her heels silent on the velvet carpet. "What are you doing, August? I'm not some project. I know that." "Then why are you showing me this?" He leaned against the doorway. "Because I wanted you to see that I'm not all penthouses and rooftop dinners." "There's more." She folded her arms. "Like what?" "I used to compose music, before the company, before any of this." She blinked. "You?" He nodded. "Piano, mostly classical, stopped after college. My father thought it was a waste of time. Did you agree?" He looked away. "Eventually." She walked to the piano and ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them. "Do you still remember how?" He didn't answer. Instead, he crossed the room and sat down on the bench beside her. His hands hovered over the keys, unsure. Then he played. It was halting at first. The melody was simple, unfinished, but it had weight. Heart. And when she joined in violin case already open on the floor, it became something more. They didn't speak during the song. They didn't need to. When the last note faded, he let his hands fall to his lap. "That's the first time I've played in 6 years. Valencia looked at him closely. "Why now?" "Because you reminded me what it feels like to miss something." She stood, packing her violin without a word, and he didn't stop her, but just as she reached the door, she turned. "If you're trying to impress me with money, you're wasting both our time." "I'm not." "Good, because I won't pretend I'm not struggling, but I'm not someone you can fix with a bracelet and a piano duet." His gaze didn't waver. "I'm not trying to fix you." She left without another word. The next day, he wasn't in the lobby, nor the next. By Thursday, something had shifted in her. She told herself it didn't matter, that she didn't care, but the truth was she kept scanning the lobby each time she performed. Friday came, still no August. That night, she took the subway to Queens, where her roommate shared a basement apartment with 2 cats and a broken radiator. They split a pizza on the floor, and Valencia tried to act normal. "You like him," her roommate said, not looking up from her phone. "I barely know him." "That's not a no," Valencia sighed. "He's complicated, so are you. He's rich, so I don't want to be someone's escape." Her roommate finally looked at her. Maybe he doesn't want to escape, maybe he wants to feel something real. Valencia didn't sleep that night. Saturday morning, a knock at her apartment door startled her. She opened it to find a hotel bellhop holding a glossy black envelope. "For Miss Carter," he said, and handed it to her before disappearing. Inside was a handwritten note, no pressure, just music below it, an address. She debated for an hour. Then she dressed. The building at the address was a converted warehouse on the riverfront. She was buzzed in by name and followed the soft hum of music down a corridor until she reached a rehearsal studio with floor-to-ceiling windows and a grand piano in the center. August sat at it, playing the same melody they'd improvised together, but now it had evolved. She stepped in slowly. "You came," he said without turning. "You invited me." He stood and faced her. "I rented this studio, thought maybe we could try something." She raised an eyebrow. "A duet, a recording." She froze. "What?" "I have a friend who produces classical fusion albums. He's always looking for new talent." Her arms crossed again. "So now you're a talent scout?" "No, I'm someone who knows when something deserves to be heard." Valencia looked around. There were microphones set up, sheet music, a small soundboard humming in the corner. "This is insane," she said. "Maybe, but so is not trying." She stared at him. And then slowly she stepped forward, opened her case, and lifted her violin. "You get one chance," he smiled. "That's all I need." And when they played, this time it was more than a duet. It was a collision of 2 lives, messy, unpolished, and full of potential. Neither of them said it, but they both felt it. Something was beginning, something real. Valencia's fingers still tingled from the final note as she stepped back from the mic stand. The recording studio's silence pressed thick around her, broken only by the slow exhale of the sound engineer behind the glass. "Again?" she asked without turning. August stood by the window, arms folded, his gaze fixed on the skyline outside. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the studio floor, stretching toward her like they were reaching through time. He looked over his shoulder. "Let's listen first." She nodded and set her violin down on the velvet-lined bench beside the piano. Her legs ached from standing, but her heart beat with the same rhythm it had during every final bow at youth orchestra competitions, the quiet rush that came before applause. The playback began. Valencia sat beside August on the leather couch, shoulder not quite touching his, as their music filled the room again, only this time it wasn't just them playing. It was them captured, preserved, undeniable. She didn't speak until it ended. "It's better than I thought." "That's because it's honest," he said. She turned to him then, studying the side of his face. "You don't usually let people see this side of you, do you?" He didn't answer right away. "No, why me?" His jaw tightened slightly. "Because when I'm around you, I stop calculating." Valencia blinked, unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to being the reason someone dropped their guard. She was used to being overlooked, reduced to background noise, something pleasant but unimportant. "I didn't ask for any of this," she said eventually. "I know. I'm not looking for a shortcut. I'm not trying to get ahead through someone else's connections. I never said you were." She pulled her knees up onto the couch, hugging them as she stared at the floor. "You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to. But why? You barely know me." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Because I spent years building something that made me rich and miserable, and then you played one song in a hotel lobby and I started feeling again." That should mean something. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It stretched between them like a thread pulled taut. "I haven't told you everything," she said, voice low. "I didn't expect you to. My mom's in assisted care, early onset dementia. I cover what I can, but sometimes it's not enough. That's why I took the hotel job. It's not because I love playing for strangers sipping overpriced cocktails." He looked over at her. "You don't have to explain. I do. Because I need you to understand I'm not someone you can rescue." August straightened. "I'm not trying to rescue you, I'm trying to know you." Her breath caught, and for a moment she wanted to believe it was that simple, but she knew better. As she reached for her violin case, his phone buzzed on the table. He ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. She glanced at the screen, catching only a name, Cadden. "You should get that," she said, standing. He didn't move. "Seriously," she added. "It might be important," he sighed and answered. "Yeah." Her eyes drifted to the window while he spoke in clipped, low tones. She tried not to listen, but she caught fragments. "Not tonight. No, I said I'd handle it. She doesn't know, just wait." He hung up. "I should go," Valencia said, already halfway to the door. "Wait." She turned. "You're right," he said. "You don't know me, not all of me. Then tell me the truth." He hesitated. "I own Bellview Holdings, the hotel, the recording studio, the restaurant we had dinner in, that rooftop." "Mine too." Valencia stared. "So this whole thing, you've been orchestrating it from the start?" "No, not from the start. At first you were just a sound that stopped me in my tracks. I didn't even know your name. But then I kept listening. And then I didn't want to stop." She shook her head, stepping back. "You should have told me." "I wanted to, but every time I tried, I thought maybe I'd ruin it." The air between them changed, charged now with something sharper. "You think I wouldn't have figured it out? I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything. I've seen what happens when people find out who I am. They either run or they pretend they're not impressed while waiting for a handout." Valencia set the case down, her voice rising. "I'm not like them. I know that now. But you didn't trust me to begin with." "No, I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust that I could want something real and not destroy it." Her jaw clenched. "Well, congratulations. You've made it very hard to trust you." He stepped closer, not touching her. "I'll prove it." "How?" "By not asking you to stay. If you walk out of here, I won't chase you. I won't try to fix anything. But if you come back tomorrow, we start over. No secrets." She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. Then she picked up her case and left without another word. August didn't go after her. He spent the night in the studio, replaying the music they'd made until the sky turned pale. The next morning, he returned to the hotel lobby. Sat down in the same chair. No bourbon this time, just waiting. At 4 o'clock, she didn't come. At 5, the concierge approached him with a small envelope. "She left this for you." Inside was a single sheet of music paper, a new composition, untitled, unfinished, but the last line was handwritten. "Tomorrow, same time." August leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and exhaled. She hadn't walked away, not forever. Valencia entered the Bellevue Grand lobby with a wrapped bundle in her arms instead of her violin. Her coat was buttoned tight, the collar upturned as though bracing against more than just the cold. She walked past the concierge without acknowledgement and headed straight for the mezzanine elevator. August was already waiting. He wore no suit this time. A charcoal sweater, sleeves pushed to his forearms, and dark jeans. It was the first time she'd seen him without precision. His hair was undone, hands in his pockets, gaze steady as the elevator opened. "You came," he said. "I brought something," she replied. He stepped aside to let her in, and neither spoke as the elevator rose. The rehearsal studio was quiet when they arrived. The lights were dimmed low, sunlight streaking in through the tall windows. Valencia crossed to the piano and placed the wrapped item gently on the bench. She peeled back the fabric to reveal a battered, mahogany metronome, its brass pendulum tarnished from years of use. "It belonged to my father," she said. "He gave it to me before he left, said it was the only thing that kept him from falling apart on stage." August sat across from her on the bench. "Did he play?" "Trumpet, jazz, left when I was 11, never looked back." He waited, letting the silence expand. "I kept it all these years, never used it, but I thought maybe you should have it. If we're really starting over, I want you to have something real, not polished, not perfect." August reached for it slowly. "Thank you." "I didn't come for another duet," she said. "I came for answers." He nodded. "Ask, why music? You said your father didn't approve, but you still play, you still care." "I think I always hoped he'd come back if I played well enough," he said. Then one day I realized I wasn't playing for him anymore. I was playing for me, and then I stopped. Because I thought it didn't matter if no one heard it. Valencia leaned forward. It does matter. It always matters. Even if no one hears it but you. He looked at her, something unspoken flickering in his eyes. I've done things I'm not proud of, he said. Built my company on taking risks, making enemies. I've walked into mergers where I knew people would lose jobs. I've shut down entire divisions because the numbers didn't work. I didn't care until you. I'm not asking you to change the past, she said. But I need to know if you're capable of being more than numbers and strategy. I don't want numbers anymore, he said. I want something that breathes, something that doesn't come with a contract. She stood and walked to the window, arms crossed over her chest. I'm scared of losing myself in someone else's world. Then let's build something new together, she turned slowly. I don't need saving, I know, but I do. They didn't speak again for a long moment. Then Valencia stepped forward and reached for his hand. If we do this, it has to be on equal footing, he nodded. No more secrets, no more performances. Just us, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. That evening, he took her to a converted gallery space in Soho where a small private recital was being held, not to perform, just to listen. They sat in the back row, hands barely touching on the velvet armrest, surrounded by strangers whose eyes were closed, lost in the music. Afterward, he turned to her. Come with me next weekend. I'm going to Vienna. There's a chamber quartet playing at the Musikverein. I want you to be there. I can't afford Vienna. I didn't ask you to, she hesitated. I have responsibilities. I know. I've already arranged coverage for your shifts at the hotel, and I made a donation to your mother's care facility anonymously. They'll use it to upgrade her treatment options. You don't owe me anything. Valencia stared at him, struck silent. I don't want to buy your time, Valencia. I want to share mine with you. She stepped in closer. You still don't get it. I never wanted your money. I know, he said. That's what makes me want to spend it on you. The next morning, they left for Vienna. She wore a simple black coat, hair braided down her back, and he kept his hand on the small of her back as they boarded a private jet with no fanfare, no entourage, just them. They landed to snow and silence, checked into a small boutique hotel with creaky floors and handwritten welcome notes. He didn't book the penthouse. At the concert, she cried during the second movement. Not loud, not visibly. Just a single tear down her cheek as the cello hummed a note so low it felt like it was carved into her bones. August saw it. He didn't say anything. That night, he took her to a quiet rooftop above the city, wrapped in borrowed blankets, snowflakes catching in her hair. I've never felt this, she said quietly. Not even when I played for world stages. He held her hand. Then let's keep feeling it. When they returned to New York, she played her final set in the hotel lobby, not because she had to, because she wanted to say goodbye on her own terms. She wore a cream-colored blouse, her violin tucked beneath her chin like it belonged there. August waited near the elevator, hands clasped behind him. When she finished, the lobby erupted into applause louder than usual, fuller. She bowed once, then stepped aside as August approached. He didn't carry flowers, he didn't kneel, he simply offered her a small key. To the studio, he said. It's yours now, full access, record what you want, play when you want, no expectations. She looked up at him, chest rising with a held breath, then she took the key and his hand. And they walked out of the lobby together, two halves of a song finally finished. They didn't need more words, they had everything they needed, and it was real. The first snowfall of December dusted the Manhattan skyline like powdered sugar, and Valencia Carter stood inside the studio, barefoot on warm wood floors, watching the city blur beneath frosted glass. She hadn't touched her violin in 3 days, not out of avoidance, but reverence. The last recording session had been transformative. Something had shifted in her, and in August, he entered quietly, holding 2 paper cups of tea from the shop she loved near the park. Without speaking, he handed her one and leaned beside the window. His eyes had lost that restless edge they once carried, the one that made her feel like he was always half somewhere else. Now, when he looked at her, he was fully present. I heard back from the producer, he said, breaking the silence. He wants to feature the track on a collaborative album. No pressure, just an offer. Valencia wrapped her hands around the cup. I'd want my name credited, not hidden behind another artist. Of course, August replied. Your name, your terms, she studied him. You're really doing it, aren't you? Letting go of control. I think I finally realized control isn't the same as peace, he said, and I'd rather have peace with you than power alone. Valencia set down her tea. There's something I need to ask, and I don't want you to answer just to make me feel better. Ask. If everything fell apart tomorrow, the company, the money, the studio, would you still want this? Me, August didn't hesitate. Yes, but not because you're my escape from that world. Because you're the only part of it that ever felt real. She closed the distance between them and touched his jaw gently. I believe you, she said, and I want this, all of it. If you're willing to stop hiding behind what you've built and start living in it. He took her hand and pressed it to his chest. Then stay with me. I already did, she whispered. That evening, August took her somewhere she hadn't expected, a modest brownstone in Brooklyn, tucked between ivy-covered buildings. Inside, the space was warm with exposed brick, bookshelves full of worn pages and old photos, and a Steinway upright against the far wall. This was my mother's place, he said quietly, locking the door behind them. She left it to me. I haven't been back in years. Valencia stepped in carefully, reverently. Why now? Because I want to start something here, not a new company, a life. She turned to him, heart thudding. You want to live here, he nodded. Not forever, but it's where I want us to begin. Valencia's throat tightened. You're serious? I've never been more. That night they sat on the old velvet sofa, his head on her shoulder, her hand tangled in his. No music, no audience, no performance. Just them. Weeks passed. The album track was finalized and Valencia's name appeared beside August's in the liner notes. The producer insisted on a small launch event. August offered his penthouse for the occasion, but Valencia declined. I want this to be ours, she said. Not a spectacle. So they hosted it in the Brooklyn brownstone, with string lights across the ceiling, a borrowed catering table from a friend, and soft winter jazz playing in the background. People came, musicians, friends, even the concierge from the Belleview Grand, who brought a bottle of red wine and tears in his eyes. After the last guest left, August pulled Valencia to the piano bench. Play one more with me, she lifted her violin. Only if you follow me this time, he laughed softly. I think I've been following you since the first note. They played until the candles flickered low. Months later, spring arrived. The cherry blossoms bloomed along the park trails, and Valencia found herself walking hand in hand with August past the very corner where she used to busk in college, back when she couldn't afford a Metro card, let alone studio time. She paused. This is where I used to play when I didn't know what I was doing with my life. You knew, August said. You just hadn't found the right audience yet. She looked up at him. You're not just my audience anymore. No, he said. I'm your partner. The next morning, she woke to the sound of the piano downstairs. She wandered down in his shirt, barefoot, the smell of coffee drifting through the air. On the piano, there was a note. Not written, but composed sheet music with the title at the top, For Valencia, My Forever Song. She picked it up and followed the melody on her violin, sight reading it as she went. When she reached the final measure, he entered the room holding a small velvet box. I told you once I wasn't offering a ring, he said. But I lied, because now I am. He opened it slowly. A gold band with a subtle engraving, a violin and a piano carved in a quiet duet, Marry Me, not because it's convenient, not because it's expected, but because I love you, entirely. Without conditions. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She stepped forward, took his face in her hands, and kissed him like she was answering with breath instead of words. Yes, she said against his lips. 1,000 times yes. They married in the brownstone on a rainy afternoon, surrounded by music and laughter and the scent of lilacs. No press, no flash, no spectacle, just love. After the ceremony, she played a song she'd written just for him. He didn't speak, he couldn't. But when the final note faded, he crossed the room and kissed her as though the music would never end. It didn't. Years later, in that same Brooklyn home, music still floated through the rooms, sometimes hers, sometimes his, sometimes both. They recorded an album together, then another. She taught master classes. He stepped back from his company, investing instead in young artists and small music programs that reminded him of Valencia. They never moved to a penthouse. They never needed to. Because everything they had built, every note, every silence, every moment was already more than enough. And every time she lifted her bow, every time he sat at the piano, they knew they had composed their love into something lasting, and it would never stop playing.